So welcome everybody. Thank you all very much for coming. This is our Soul Talks program. We recently moved back to our home, back to the second floor. This is where we do our yoga, but we also like this beautiful room. So we're glad to move to this new transition. So today we have a very special guest. He is a SWAMI, a monk, who spends a lot of time all around the world, but he spends a lot of time in New Zealand. So it's really interesting because we had a guest from New Zealand come today. And I was like, whoa. I said, do you know the teacher? And she's like, no, no. I said, he spends a lot of time in New Zealand. This is like a cool coincidence. And he's a brilliant speaker. He speaks at many universities. And I probably cannot do a proper introduction. Maybe we have one of his disciples here, one of his students, give an introduction. Or I'll step out of the way and just let you hear the Swami. So thank you very much. His name is DEVAMRITA Swami. He got it.
Sadam and conversation.
Well, I started out in New York City as my place of birth in this lifetime. And for 50 years, since I made my bhakti birth, which was 1972, for 50 years I've been traveling up and down every habitable continent of the world. My base is currently, in the past 25 years, in New Zealand. But from there I travel everywhere. We have someone from New Zealand? Which city?
Outside of Wellington?
Ah, very nice. I frequent a place in Wellington called the Bodkin Lounge on Vivian Street. I'm a dual national, US citizen and New Zealand citizen. So, regardless of where you are in the world these days, you're affected by the world situation. There's an old Chinese proverb, which many people take as a blessing, but actually it's a curse. But we'll look at it in a positive way. It goes like this: may you live in interesting times. So, to the Western ear, that means, yeah, I like to live in times that things are happening, awesome times. But for the Asian ear, that statement, may you live in interesting times, means may you have a lot of trouble. So that's going to be our theme today, along with another axiom, which originated from an economist, but it has broad application to our life. It says that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now, those of you who know about the prime Bhakti Yoga text, Bhagavad Gita, may remember it begins in a crisis. In fact, the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which many may know as an introduction, actually has an alternative title, The Yoga of Despair. So that's how Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Supreme Atman, begins. And from there, it develops into precious wisdom about not only how to handle the material world, but also how to go beyond. The motivating factor, the immediate motivating factor, is a crisis. And that crisis, according to Krishna, who's also known as Yogeshwara, the master of the yoga system, that crisis originates from mistaking the body and mind to be the self. So if you want a prism by which you can analyze the current commotion in the world, you can look through that lens as Bhagavad Gita presents. The main person, Arjuna, has a problem, according to Krishna. Arjuna is identifying with his body and those related to his body as his prime focus in life. So how does that syndrome that Arjuna is going through, how does it relate to the commotion so prevalent today? Social scientists point out that when there's crunch time, when there's a time of social pressure in terms of economic instability, political uncertainty, and then add to that environmental havoc, in such times, people double down. Human beings double down on illusion. When you are covered by the mirage of material identification, you go deeper into that illusion. You want to identify with your body more because you feel a strength, you feel a sense of strength in group identification based on the body. that makes you have an artificial sense of feeling secure and feeling able to handle whatever challenges come your way, because you have strength in your body identification. Your group, you start taking shelter of those who match your label. And then simultaneously, that involves despising someone who's not in your group. All these moves build up your strength. I've got my group and you're not in my group. This is the time when response, when people feel insecure, they go deeper into this illusion. You see, if you want to motivate people materially, what's the best way to do that? We're not talking about spiritually. But as we push on with our spiritual endeavors, which I know most of you here are starting and moving in that direction of spiritual development. But if you want to adopt the material solution, the so-called solution, what you do is you need to be angry. Anger is such a powerful materialistic motivating factor. If you're just in anxiety, and social scientists point this out, if you're just in anxiety, you're kind of immobilized. Anxiety means I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what my response should be. That's the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna. Krishna, I don't know what to do. All my options look bleak. He's a warrior, and he's whatever road to drive on, he sees massive problems. Should I fight? Should I not fight? It's all too bewildering for me. This is anxiety to the extent that Arjuna's skin felt like it was burning. Although he's such a legendary warrior, his eyes are filled with tears. He's practically having what we would call today a psychological breakdown. So this is what anxiety can do to you. And from time to time, we've all experienced that. Situations just go opposite to what we would want, and we don't know how to cope. So, as I said, anxiety immobilizes you, and when people as a whole, as a society, are simply in anxiety, they're not susceptible to being motivated to do something. But what will motivate people to do something? Anger. So in these high pressure times of today, you're seeing more and more anger being vented. Why? Because as we identify with the body and our material hopes are disappointed, we leave ourselves wide open to being manipulated. Your problem is all because of this group, that other group, or another group. And that motivates you. You can actually swing into action. So more and more you're going to see this yogic analysis throughout the world, and you'll see this increase because people have no knowledge that they're different from their body, and therefore their material aspirations are external. They've been trained, enculturated to think that by honoring my material desires, I'll be happy. And most of you know this is a very suspicious motivation. It seems to be natural, but we've already had sufficient experience to know that looks are deceiving. That by pursuing the mirage of material fulfillment, we simply create more problems for ourselves and for others. But if you don't have that wisdom, if you're not familiar with the non-material culture, then you're going to be manipulated, taken advantage of. Your problems are because of this group or that group. Your own group is being minimized, therefore you should be angry. This is happening throughout the world on every continent. You've got to go for what you know. And what is it that you know? You're the body. You have a certain type of body, certain gender preference, certain ethnicity. It may be a complete mixture, as often the case these days, but still identify with something material and get angry that you're being minimized and others are doing better than you. So this is what's happening throughout the world. And we can't expect peace or real progress as long as this kind of consciousness prevails. So what about us as individuals? How can we, amidst such turbulence, benefit ourselves? And of course, we want to benefit others. So much of the Bhakti Yoga wisdom is about rising above not only distress, but also about rising above happiness. Now, this can seem quite exotic. Well, anyone would admit, I'd love to learn how to rise above distress. Why should I rise above happiness? Isn't happiness what it's all about? Well, if we look at the happiness situation from the ordinary Western point of view, we'll find there are two ways that you can compute your so-called material happiness. And then we'll talk about the non-material way, how to rise above even that material happiness. But first, we need to understand the current conception of happiness in the Western world, so that we know what shaped us, what's clouded us, what's bewildered us, what's been downloaded into us since birth. There are two types of material happiness as behavioral scientists will present to you these days. The first is called moment-to-moment happiness. This is calculated very easily because everyone's carrying a smartphone. The social scientists will send you an SMS message 10 times during the day. How do you feel right at this moment on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you feel good right now at this very moment? And then you send a response back. I feel number 2, I'm really low, or I feel I'm flying, I'm really feeling great, awesome, number 9. So that's how your momentary happiness is calculated. Right now, how do you feel? Never mind how anything else in your life is going. Right now, do you feel good? Are you happy? Whatever you want to call it, right at this moment. The other type of happiness, so-called happiness, is called the life appraisal happiness. That means the overall feeling, the overall judgment of how your life feels. Looking back on the past 30 years of my life, yeah, I think it's done pretty good, yeah. I think it's working out, been some problems, been some setbacks, and in fact, right now I feel depressed, but at this moment, but when I look at my life overall, it's okay, you know? Not the greatest person, I'm not the worst person. I'm not a saint, but you know, there are a lot of persons who are more injurious than me. So those are the two types of ways of looking at happiness that materialistic culture offers. Now you'd be surprised to know, perhaps, that the yogic conception of happiness disagrees with both those Western conceptions. In Bhagavad Gita, for example, Krishna again and again says you need to rise above the comings and goings of happiness and distress, because that flow of happiness and distress comes and goes like the winter and summer season. And therefore, someone who has wisdom and who has experience by applying the wisdom will not become bewildered by how happiness and distress constantly march in and out of your life. So you might wonder, well, how can you do that? You wouldn't mind learning how to rise above distress, especially these days. But why should you rise above happiness? We've been so indoctrinated to having the mission of feeling happy, feeling fulfilled in our own way. And we're always, you may notice this, at every moment, we're always analyzing ourselves. Am I happy right now? How do I really feel? What about my work life? Am I doing what I love to do? Am I doing what I'm passionate about? And what about my relationships? No matter how content you may think you are in your various relationships, especially with significant others, there's always this questioning going on because we've been trained in that way. Am I really the right person? Is this really working out? Will this really be satisfactory next month? So on and on and on this questioning goes. So much so that even during our so-called happiness feelings, we're in anxiety. So according to the yogic science, such a phenomenon is nothing to be unexpected. Why? Because as long as we identify with the body and mind as the self, we must be in anxiety because we're identifying with something we're not. By grasping these essential yogic truths of wisdom, we're able to actually understand the world's problems and how to situate ourselves. We could get into a lot of anxiety right now. There's inflation. What's my money going to be worth? The prices of everything are going up. What am I going to do? That can be our number one preoccupation. And those are practical realities that we have to deal with. At the same time, we can use the present circumstances, the pressures of the day, for understanding our non-material necessities. beings are spiritual necessities. It's ironic how people can pay so much attention to the dollars and cents and yet at the same time waste the potential of their human form of life, which is also wealth. Again and again, when we look at the Bhakti Yoga wisdom, we find that the human body is considered a treasure. And how do you spend that treasure? What exactly is that treasure? The treasure is advanced consciousness by which we can have a discussion just like we're having now. Only human beings can do that. Other creatures can't. So the stern counsel that the yoga wisdom gives is that if you look in the mirror and you see a human body, you have the mandate to become spiritually developed. That's the very essential purpose of the human body. But if we neglect that purpose, nature responds. And this may sound esoteric to the Western point of view. And nature responds to human beings who are not acting according to their mandate, who are not acting according to their potential. We live in other words, from the yogic point of view, we're embedded in nature that is not just a dead machine, but it's responsive to the consciousness of the human beings. Because the human body gives you responsibilities that other species don't have. So if we waste our human potential, nature retaliates by giving us heaps of anxieties. And that's what you see going on today. So the yogic point of view is not that the universe is just some kind of chunk of matter. Yes, there is matter, but the matter is being manipulated by conscious entities of various levels. So the human beings are one level of consciousness, and above the human beings are superior levels of consciousness, and ultimately there is the supreme consciousness. And that supreme consciousness is unlimited, infinitely attractive. So if we as human beings, whether in happiness or distress, neglect our true potential, nature lets us know about it by not cooperating. And therefore we're filled with anxiety. Anxiety is actually nature's gift to us for informing us that we're driving up the wrong road. We're off track. So as people become more and more pained by the turbulence in the world, some of them are going to look for a non-material solution. Some sociologists have pointed out that in times of societal crisis, human beings become polarized. Some become more deranged than ever, and others become more saintly than they ever were. And so you see a split. So some people are going to feel the pressures of the crises of today and be motivated to go to a spiritual option. Others are going to dig deeper, double down in their materialism. And that materialism manifests generally as body identification, solidarity for my type of body, and hatred towards your type of body. This goes on century after century. Naturally, an audience like you is thinking, well, how can we make a difference, both individually and collectively? What can we do amidst this planetary disaster? What can we do? Each one of us has the potential for demonstrating to ourselves and to others how to rise above both distress and happiness. It may seem that detaching yourself from happiness is so unnatural. What's wrong with being happy? We're so desperate to be happy that even when we're almost happy, that counts a lot. This time I almost had it all. Good enough, right? Now, as we go deeper into this discussion today, please note that your very conceptions of happiness, which are so dear to you, change as you age. In chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna points out what should be obvious, that the body is always changing while your core identity remains the same. Your non-material identity remains the same. The body is always changing. Not only is your physical form always changing, but also your conceptions of life change according to the body's changes. So it's all a package that's very volatile. When your social scientists are pointing this out, that when you're in your 20s and 30s, your conception of happiness can be summed up in terms of your quest for significant experiences. And those searching for those significant experiences can be summed up in one word: awesome. The drive for awesomeness takes up so much of your young adult life. You've got to have awesome experiences. Never mind how temporary they are, right? And you love it when you can get on the social media and tell your friends, guess what I did last week and it was awesome. What you won't go through, what you won't endure at work, just to have an awesome experience 1 day of the week, 2 days of the week, 1 night of the week, that makes everything seem to be worthwhile. But guess what? Those conceptions change as your body changes. When you're above 60, it's no longer about awesomeness. It's all about, and I know you're going to not like to hear it. When you're older, it's all about just trying to be satisfied with the routine events of life. Seeing the leaves fall from the trees, seeing the grandchildren take their first steps. Very subtly but surely, your conceptions of happiness have changed. And you just want to be grateful that it's another day. You can walk outside and breathe some air, no matter how fresh it isn't. That's where you're heading to. So I know so many of you here are young and vibrant, but that'll change. Unless you detach yourself from thinking you're the body and mind. The body and mind must go through these changes, which affect your psychology. The physiology affects the psychology. Everyone can remember how different life was before a certain change happened when you were around 12 years old. Remember how simple life was? And then all of a sudden the hormones change and woo! I'll give you an example of from my youth growing up in Queens. My youth was youth meeting before 12 years old was spent in Queens, and my formative years before my bhakti transformation were in Manhattan. I used to, as a teenager in my late teens and early 20s, I used to wander in this very area, going to various jazz clubs and places like that. There was no bhakti center. So anyway, growing up in Queens, I came home from school one day. I was 13 years old. And no, before that, let's go back even further. I was 11 years old, and my middle brother was 9.5. This is in Jamaica, Queens. Tree-lined streets, very nice neighborhood. I don't know what it's like today. So I go in the back of the house, in the backyard, and there my little brother and his little friends had dug a huge hole in the ground in the backyard. A hole deep enough that they could sit down in the hole and not be seen. So I said, what did you do this for? The older brother, so I couldn't read the authority. Why do you dig such a huge hole in the backyard? He and his little friend looked at me and said, you don't understand. We have to dig this big hole to hide in for when the girls attack. The girls attack. You don't understand. Girls do silly things and they want to bother us. So we dug this big hole so we can hide from them. 2 years later, I was 13.5 and my brother was 12. And I came home from school and I saw in front of our house, this is 176th Street off Jamaica Avenue. I saw in front of my house a big crowd of boys, younger than me. They're all my brother's age from this school class. And I saw there's some commotion going on in the center of this group of like 25 schoolboys. So being elder, being 13, I kind of pushed my way to the center. And there I saw my 11-year-old brother squared off with another boy, like boxers, and they were having a go at each other. And so I grabbed my brother by the shoulder and said, what are you doing? What are you doing right in front of my house? Why are you fighting? Why are you fighting? He looked at me. You don't understand. I said, I don't understand what? He said, we both like the same girl. What happened? In 2 years, what's going on? So as the body changes, your psychology changes. And as long as you are thinking you're the body, you must succumb to those physiological and psychological changes. Therefore, your conceptions of happiness are also body-bound. Therefore, as you age, you no longer are pursuing the awesomeness of the moment. Instead, you're resigning yourself to just take satisfaction from the ordinary things in life. I know that sounds so boring, doesn't it? So another angle that I would like to present to you is that in the advanced Bhakti Yoga text, some of you may be familiar with it. Once you finish Bhagavad Gita, which is the prime text, then there's Srimad Bhagavatam, the advanced encyclopedic text that takes all the themes of Bhagavad Gita and expands upon them. So there it said there are two classes of persons who can be happy in this world. So what are those two classes of persons that can be happy in this world? What are they? Let's see how you fit in. Category one, the completely self-realized enlightened person who knows he or she is not the body, who knows he or she is a non-material entity, part of the supreme spiritual entity. That kind of person in that class can truly be happy. So, how many do we have? So now you're thinking, okay, Swami, what's the other class? I hope and I pray and I think that no one in this room is in the other class. Class number 2 is the complete materialistic fool. Party hard, work hard. There's nothing more to life than just squeeze what you can out of every moment. That's it. Reminds me of an old blues song back in the 50s and 60s. Come on, everybody, let's have some fun. You only live but once, and when you're dead, you're done. Let the good times roll. Anyone remember that? Let the good times roll. You only live but once. When you're dead, you're done. So that class thinks itself to be happy. Of course, we know that that's the happiness of fools. But still, unfortunately, there are persons like that. And they swear, I'm happy, right now, I'm feeling good. I had a great time last Saturday. I got to work like a dog Monday to Friday. I wanted to have a few hours of pleasure, but it's all worth it. I was speaking at the University of Manchester, UK. And the audience was students, budding professionals, engineering students, pre-med students. And so it was a Thursday evening, and I asked them, well, Friday night's coming, what are you all going to do? They looked at me like I was crazy. You mean what are we going to do on our Friday night? What planet are you from? I said, no, really. I mean, I travel the world. I like to hear from different people, from different places. So they finally took me seriously. All right, what do we do on a Friday night? We get totally wasted. I said, well, that's very interesting. And what about Saturday? And they said, Saturday? Saturday, you wake up at 3 p.m. with a splitting headache. So I said, well, what's the point in getting wasted on Friday when on Saturday you feel so miserable? Oh, you don't understand, Swami. Just for a few hours, we were flying on Friday night. It's all right that we're suffering on Saturday. And then they were starting to really understand that I was asking sincere questions, non-judgmental. So they started opening up more. And one young lady who was pre-med student, she said, and you know what the funniest thing is? When you wake up at 3 p.m. on Saturday, yeah, you have a splitting headache. But the funniest thing is when there's someone next to you and you can't remember how that person got there. They all laugh. And then what's more, when Monday comes around and you go to class, you can tell all your friends about it and chuckle about it. Because after all, you were drinking and you didn't know what you were doing, so that excuses everything. So you can see that. There's a lot of unfortunate ignorance in the world, even at the educated level. And we have to be honest that that kind of conception can affect us also, even though we want to be spiritual people. Sometimes we just don't know about how factual, how solid is spiritual happiness, which is beyond material happiness and distress. So you gotta do something, right? You gotta fill the time doing something. And in this way, we remain trapped in low-level consciousness. So my point here, and please think about this, is that we can use the commotions and turbulences of the day to push us forward in our spiritual development. And that spiritual development takes us beyond not only distress, but also beyond happiness. Remember, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, happiness and distress come and go like the winter and summer seasons. The qualified, genuine yogi and meditator is not shaken by these comings and goings, by the flow of material happiness and distress. So we should start thinking, what is beyond material happiness? I'd love to find out what's beyond distress, but I always thought that beyond material distress is just material happiness. But some of you may know about the knowledge of duality. In material existence, things come always in twos: hot, cold, pain, pleasure, wealth, poverty, and happiness and distress. They're just two sides of the same coin. You can't have one side of the coin without the other side. And this is what perplexes us so much. Why can't I just have the happiness side? Why must there be the distress side? But the yogic wisdom tells us this is how material existence is constructed. But there is a level beyond that. And you won't see peace in the world until a significant number of persons go to the level beyond the twosome of happiness and distress, the duality of happiness and distress. So this is why the bhakti yoga practice is so important. It's about reshaping, re-engineering your lifestyle so that you're tapping into something that's beyond just physiology and psychology. Someone who knows that art, science, and culture of going beyond material happiness can thrive even amidst the turbulence of the day. In fact, you can use that turbulence to push you higher past the material comings and goings of this and that. Well, this is true expertise. This is true yogic expertise. How to use even distressful external circumstances to propel you higher in your spiritual development. And then, because you're not selfish, you want to teach others how to do the same. All right, so maybe we have some time for some questions. How are we doing for time?
We're amazing. That was 45 minutes on the dot.
Should we take some questions?
Yes, please, questions. Everyone, take this opportunity.
Yeah. You get a bonus for asking the first question.
So from an anxiety perspective,
Hmm.
right? I think we all have it, because we weren't on when you were asking which side are you on, I'm not enlightened, so I have anxiety. If you're not there from a spiritual journey yet, that's something you want to go towards, but for now, what can you do to kind of control and help that? Because it's going to take some time to get to.
Yes, you brought up a very good point, and I should have elaborated more on it when I was speaking about the two categories, the two classes. The enlightened, and then the complete materialistic fool, and then so the Bhakti Yoga texts say everyone in between must be in anxiety. Because we're not smart enough to be enlightened, and we're not dumb enough to be materialistic fool. So we're stuck in the middle, and we're in anxiety. Okay, so what to do? You got to make progress toward the spiritual self-discovery. You don't want to go the other way, toward just dumbing yourself down. You have to be progressive, that's the point. Who knows how many lifetimes it took for you just to ask a question like that? You're making progress. The question you've asked is not an ordinary question. It's the symptom of a real human being. In other words, to be a genuine human being, you have to start asking questions like that. Otherwise, you haven't actualized your human potential. So don't downplay what you just asked. You had some experiences and you had some intuitions, you had some insights. There must be something better on offer. And you're right, there is. So just be progressive.
Thank you. Other question, please.
Yeah.
What is the difference between karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga?
Oh, that's a long subject. That would be a lecture in itself. But let me just briefly answer that since you asked by saying that the yoga ladder has different steps, all culminating in bhakti. So karma yoga, jnana yoga, they're different steps. It's good to be progressive, but also it's better to know where those steps are leading. What's the top rung of the yoga ladder? And that's the love supreme. This is where Bhagavad Gita is taking you. Anything else? Yes.
You talked about you touched upon like spreading the message of bhakti and like enlightenment with others. But how do you do that without being dogmatic, enforcing your sort of views upon others, and spreading your views with love rather than dogma?
That takes compassion and sensitivity. You can impress people by your own integrity and purity, and they'll be impressed. But what's there something different about you? I had an experience at the Newark airport some years ago. This is back when the TSA was just starting and they were much strict. And so every time I would go through the security checkpoint at the Newark airport wearing traditional clothes like I'm wearing now, they would pull me aside and pat me down. They don't do it anymore because the machines are much more accurate and sensitive. But some years ago, they would always pull me aside. Okay, you've got these bulges, not usual attire. Don't mind if we pat you down. They're in public. They're just, just had enough of it. So for flying out of Newark Airport, I would just wear regular clothes, like you were wearing, and so that they wouldn't put me through the whole ordeal of patting my whole body down in public. Just didn't like it, So I went through with another devotee, and we were both wearing Western attire. They didn't pat me down, but there was something in my bag they wanted to take a look at. Carry on. So there I am, and the guys, the TSA guys going through my carry-on bag, and you're okay, he said. And then he looks at me and he looks at the other devotee and me and says, "What's with you guys? How come you're so happy?" He said that with astonishment. We weren't dressed in traditional attire, we were wearing these Western clothes that he picked up. What's with you guys? What are you into? So you can impress persons just by the purity of your lifestyle. And of course, gradually, you'll learn the art of how to present the Bhakti Yoga wisdom in a non-confrontational way. You have to start somewhere. You can plug into the activities here at this center and learn the art. The world needs unlimited numbers of persons who are willing to try to show people by example and teach people about how the Bhakti Yoga wisdom is so crucial for today. You have to start somewhere. Anything else? Let me know how we're doing. Don't be afraid to say it.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. All right.
How do you balance between the mundane and the divine?
How do you balance between the mundane and the divine? By using the mundane in the service of the divine. Let's take, for example, a statement in the New Testament, which is important if you consider Jesus Christ to be a topmost Bhakti yogi. He taught the love supreme. He's according to the New Testament, he's to have said, you need to know how to be in the world, but not of the world. Now that's actually mystic yoga. That's Bhakti mysticism. That's like telling someone, submerge yourself in the ocean, but don't get wet. So this is why the mantra meditation, the Hare Krishna mantra is so important. It infuses you with the ability to operate in the material world from the spiritual perspective. And it gives you the clarity and vision to see how to do that. The right sound vibration can do all that for you. And the wrong sound vibration, materialistic sound vibration, will just plunge you deeper into illusion. So the more you allow the spiritual sound of the Maha Mantra to shape your life, the more you can see how to use even the material for the service of the divine. It's all about your lifestyle. Your body and mind are also the energies of Krishna. You can learn how to use those tools for deeper connection with Krishna. Maybe one more and then, yes. One more person had it. Okay, go on. Yes.
What would you suggest when you start to experience doubt?
Doubt in what?
Did you say debt or doubt?
Doubt.
Doubt.
I just said doubt, yeah, I thought debt. Or like
Doubt.
she's starting to,
Mhm. Well, it's a general question, as I said, doubt in what, but let me point out that from the Bhakti point of view, doubt is the sign of intelligence. Until you have access to sufficient information to quell your doubts. And then doubting is unproductive. If you're given the wisdom and the process for verifying the wisdom. So let me close by saying that, for example, nowhere in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna ask you to believe anything. Bhakti Yoga is not about enforcing a dogma upon you or doctrine. Everywhere in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm going to teach you the process for verifying what I'm saying. Do this, do that, and this is the result you'll get. So doubting is good until you're at the point where you're getting knowledge from an authorized source, from a non-material source, and that source is giving you the procedures for verifying the knowledge. Then you're really into something, right? All right, there you have it. So I thank you all so much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. Maharaj has written a book that actually expounds a lot on this called Hiding an Unnatural Happiness, which we usually have loads of copies. Last time I ordered from the DBT, they didn't have any. So hopefully we will get more, we'll have more. But if you're looking for that, I think goes much deeper into this topic, then come see me upstairs. We'll have lunch upstairs. Thank you all so much for coming. Other programs to come to on Tuesday night. If you're new on Tuesday night, we started with this sort of chanting sound meditation. On Tuesdays, we have from 7:30 to 8:30. Please come join us. Or on Thursdays from 7 to 9, at any point in time, leave at any point in time. We also have pilgrimages to India. We also have community groups where people are sort of learning these initial practices of bhakti. Our beginning bhakti group meets once a week, and they read something called The Journey Within, that sort of talks about these practices, back to the question of doubt, about these practices and verifying them, etc. So again, we're here every Saturday from 11:30 to 1. Thank you all for coming. I think on the one floor up, we'll have lunch. It is vegan, it's blessed, and we'll have an opportunity to talk some more and just be with each other. So again, thank you so much, Maharaj. Yes, you can leave the cards. Or you can take them with you. Yes, yeah. And you don't need to take care of, we'll take care of the room. Don't worry about that. You can just go upstairs. And someone will show you the way up. I brought it. Yes. Thank you. Have you time for
Thank you so much. That's really nice. So I started last year, and there's been different. I was my friend. Even this which is exactly what you're saying. Even if it's something small, like still.
Keep it up, be consistent.
It's just something, I don't know why. Anyone that says try it, I don't know why. Read it. I don't want it to be
Come here and get a test.
and that's why it's thank you.
Yes. Where did I last see? I was just in London last week.
I was here, I knew that, and I was thinking, you're here, so.
Thank you for coming. Your name now is? Imai Chandra. Oh. Very good.
I'll be there tonight.
All right.
Maybe tomorrow, yeah, so, let me see.